You are listening to Anna Letitia Cook at Women Up Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Women Up Radio. Today's guest is Vasi Huntalas. We're absolutely delighted to have her on. She's the founder of Ignite Your Soul, and she's a coach for high-achieving women leaders and a keynote speaker. So lots of experience. And we're going to be talking about boosting energy to overcome stress and to create really sustainable success. So welcome to the show, Vasi, and thank you so much for coming.
I'm so glad to be here and excited to share one of my favorite topics.
Brilliant. So I know very much you talk about energy and you're an expert in energy and managing it. So I know knowing how to manage your energy is obviously a key leadership skill, because no matter what role or what title we have, we need it. So how can we learn more about it? How can we use it, not just to benefit ourselves, but also to benefit our colleagues?
Well, I love what you said about not just benefiting ourselves, but benefiting our colleagues, because I define leadership a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And I define leadership as a conscious use of our energy to inspire, support, and engage others. And so we all know times when we walked into a room or a meeting or even gotten on a Zoom call and something feels off, the person who's leading it or perhaps dominating the meeting, their energy is different. So that affects all of us. It creates a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So it absolutely starts with us. And so being conscious of our energy is a first step to being able to inspire others and support others and lead others ultimately.
Yeah. And so how do we really know where we can find our energy? How do we, I'd like to think that I'm a high energy person, but it's not quite the same thing. That's physical energy. And I think you're talking far more about a deeper type of energy. So
Yeah. And so this is where we get into a little bit of a, I want to say gray area.
Yeah.
Because energy isn't something, we're used to things that have a physicality to them, right?
Yep.
Like we can put a name and look at them and see them. Energy is, like you said, there's a physical aspect, but there's also an emotional aspect. And it's also about our mindset and the thoughts that we think. So it's the harmony of all three of those.
Yep.
That's been my experience that creates the experience of someone's energy. So if you focus just on your mindset, but not your physical, energy, it's not going to be as fully present. You will notice someone isn't really there with you. Their energy is partly somewhere else, or they're just up in their head. They're not fully in the whole of their body.
Yep.
And the same thing is if someone is distracted emotionally or something's weighing on their heart, we also won't feel a sense of their energy with us.
Yeah.
And so really it comes to, and the term I'm going to use is self-mastery. So how do we, to go back to your question, how do we know energy and how do we master this energy, is we start first within ourselves, bringing those three into harmony: emotional, mental, and physical energies into balance, in other words.
Yeah. I know. I think it's like if you're in a meeting, but you've got some kind of problem at home, or you've got another meeting later on that's making you freak out, or it's really important, or it's got problems you've got to convince people. It's almost like you lose part of your energy as you've just defined it because you're split in different directions.
That's a great way to explain it. It's true. And we know when someone's not all there, like I said, right? And so this is the thing, is the more that we can pay attention to those three energies within ourselves.
Yes.
And, the thing is that so much we're rewarded and acknowledged for a lot of things that have to do with our mental focus and our productivity.
Yeah.
And so we push things down if there's a something in our heart that's weighing on our heart. Or like you said, something's happened. And now that we're working in our home environment so much more, that separation is, it's not as easy to separate because we don't have the physical boundary. A lot of times there's things going on in our environment. So that's why more than ever, it's important to be aware of our energies, our three energies as I define them, and being conscious of, are we really truly present for a meeting? Maybe it's to a benefit to be 10 seconds, 30 seconds later, if you use that time in a conscious way to just let go of whatever's bothering you, just to say, okay, sometimes I do this around my workspace. I step away from my workspace.
Yes.
And then I step back into it.
Yep.
With the intention that whatever it is I left, or I left at the door when I walked in, just a simple little technique like that can go such a long way in our productivity.
Yep. It's almost like you change your character, your persona. You leave the stressed one to one side. In fact, stress is another thing that I wanted to ask you about, because everyone's stressed. I mean, there's good stress and there's bad stress, and people tend to only think of bad stress. But it sounds like with the energy and boosting your energy and sort of controlling the way you channel the flow of it, it should be able to help a lot with managing stress if you know how you're doing it. So I know you also work very much with helping people overcome stress and stress problems and to channel it positively. How can we use that? And what would you recommend to give us more confidence, to give us more of a boost, to challenge our self-limiting beliefs, things like that, and to help us move forward? I mean, I talk always about business because I work much more in the corporate world, but I'm sure whether it's for business or in our personal life, if we could use that, if we could harness your energy, and also if we can better manage stress in the right way, we must be able to do some good. So what would you recommend? How can we do it?
One of the best ways to manage stress is to pay attention to your self-talk.
Yep.
Because a lot of times that's what we impose on others.
Yeah, I'm going to close my ears.
Yeah, none of us can relate to that, right? So it's about that inner critic that's within us and that says you should do this, or you're not good enough, or you don't have enough, or, whatever. And I don't even want to say any more of those negative things because we know those are familiar. But my point is that the more you're aware that those are the things you're saying to yourself, and they're not truth.
Yes.
They're self-limiting beliefs. Our mind is trying to protect us. That's the part of ourself that's trying to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And so when you identify those shoulds, a lot of times stress also comes from the self-talk that's, I should do this, or I should complete it by this time. Before I started my business years ago, I worked in corporate. Yeah. And I also, after I started my business, started working with people in corporate. And what I found is a lot of the things, the mindsets and the stressors that we had in corporate, we bring right into starting our own business. We start our own business. And the reason is because of the self-talk. Yeah. So a lot of times we think, oh, I just need to take a vacation, or I just need to go for a walk. And those things are wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're taking the same mind and self-talk with you, you're still going to find the stress. Yeah. So be aware of the stress. That's one of the best tips be aware of the self-talk is one of the best tips for managing stress. Yeah. And to then, even writing them down, sometimes you can see them and you go, what? This isn't true. Like some part of us, we need to take them out of that cycle that's running, in our head and put them on paper, maybe tear it up, maybe really ask yourself, is that really true? Yeah. Like, I can tell you how many years that I was speaking, that those programs were still running. And finally I looked back and I went, wait, none of those things ever happened. Or if they did, I, adapted, I found a way through it. So it's important to remind ourselves that we are not those self-limiting beliefs.
Yes. Yeah, that's incredible. Makes such a difference. Um, and I mean, you talking just there made me think of 3 or 4 that I tell myself on a regular basis. But the idea of writing them down, I've always resisted, because you get people talking about journaling and gratitude notes and things like that. I've always resisted that. But then years ago, I resisted meditating. And it wasn't until I was like, oh, meditating, no, rubbish, not for me. And I had the big boss of a television channel, a national television channel, and really stressed, real pressure. And he was calm always. And I used to speak to him twice a week with our coaching sessions. And I said, okay, so how do you do it? He said, I meditate. I'm like, what? He said, yep. He said, I meditate at least 10 minutes every morning and at least 20 minutes every evening. And I was like, you are the least meditation type person I've ever met. And he said, yeah, but it clears my head and it gives me that real peace. So I started meditating after that, which really helped. But with what you've just said about writing it down, it's the first time I've felt, yeah, that is a good reason to write down, because if I can write down the stupid ideas I'm telling myself and then see that really they are stupid and I've just invented half of it, or I've put an angle on it that doesn't exist, I think that's a really good reason, because then I can remind myself and keep myself grounded and not go on one of my little illusions of, all the things I do wrong. I'm going to try that. Thank you. That's good.
I'm so glad that resonated for you.
Yeah.
Because to be quite honest, the vast majority of people I talk with and work with, they can't meditate.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
It's the same reason that we get caught in the self-talk, because the mind is so active.
Yeah.
So perhaps down the line, or perhaps starting for a minute or two, but in the meantime, yes, write down those thoughts. And then I'm going to take it a step further too. Yeah. So this might be something you might want to try. So are you right-handed?
Left.
You're left-handed.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm difficult. I'm always the opposite.
That's okay. I'll tell you why I asked. So the majority of people are right-handed. So I'm going to just share this for the majority of people that might listen that are right-handed. So the opposite side of our brain, like our right side of our brain controls our left side of our body, right? Our right side of our brain is more of our intuitive, and it's not where those limiting beliefs are.
Yeah.
It's in the possibility space. So after you or someone writes that self-limiting belief, the negative self-talk, with their right hand, their dominant hand, and in their left hand, ask, what is the truth? And write. Answer that question, what is the truth? Writing with your left hand. Because that's going to tap into your intuition. Yeah.
Okay.
So for you, you can still do it. But it's going to be not as awkward for you because you're writing with the left hand. But so what that does is it allows the other part of ourself that isn't the ego mind, or isn't the part that's fearful or nervous, to actually have a voice and make itself heard by doing that journaling. So if you're going to journal, this is a more intentional way of journaling.
That's interesting. Huh. I knew right and left controlled sort of the opposite part, but I always get really confused with which part of the brain does which thing. But the idea of switching and using the other so that you sort of open up your intuition, that's fascinating. So I presume that also works on creativity. It also helps boost your creativity.
It does. It totally boosts your creativity. Yeah. And there's a lot of things you can do to boost your creativity. That's actually, to go back to what you were talking about, managing stress. That's another one of the tips I encourage and invite people to do at least 5 to 10 minutes a day of something creative.
Yeah.
And usually when I say that, people go, but I'm not creative. Well, here's something that can really blow your mind, is that everyone is creative.
Yes.
Everyone is creative. Not everyone's artistic. And
Yep.
unfortunately, we've linked those two together.
Yeah.
But everyone is creative. And so if you spend 5 to 10 minutes a day doing something creative, and we'll just open up the activities here. It could be dancing, because these are all the things that'll use your right side of your brain. It could be, it could be art related. We'll rule that out. But it could also be things that playing an instrument, musical instrument, singing, gardening. It could be anything like that, because we spend so much of our day up in our heads with technology, analyzing, planning. Those are our left brain things. Yep. And they're great for doing focused linear tasks.
Yep.
However, the right side of our brain is what we use for innovation and visioning. And so if we aren't doing activities each day, even for a little bit, we aren't going to have as easy access to visioning and innovation, and different things like that. And quite honestly, that right side of the brain is we're really important to access in days and times, because it also helps us be adaptable. Yeah. So we'll notice if we're more doing analytical things, we tend to be more rigid and focused, and change is harder.
Interesting.
And the left side of our brain is also responsible for it's literal. So it only references the past. Yeah. Or it worries about the future.
Oh, really? Well, I've got a very strange brain then.
And the right side really helps us to be present. So even doing those creativity practices a day, because creativity really is a discipline, is basically what I'm saying. The more that we can do that, the more that we can show up in the moment. Now I'm going back to the energy piece that we talked about earlier, and be present, because we're actually retraining ourselves.
Yeah, that's interesting. But actually, speaking about that and painting and, that type of creativity, my best friend, who knows me very well because we grew up together, she knows that she's had problems managing various situations. So she's had a lot of stress, which she's managing amazingly well. She does dancing, ballroom dancing. It's her escape is ballroom dancing. And also recently, because things have got very bad around her, she started painting, but she doesn't just paint spontaneously. She does almost like the adult version of painting by numbers, that type of thing, which she's shown me some of the things she's done, and it's great. And she said, it's so relaxing. It just helps me completely zone out. And I was moaning and bitching just before Christmas about, oh God, and she was like, you're stressed. I said, yes, I know. So this little parcel appeared a few days later, and she's given me a painting kit.
Yay.
I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Right? And I love anything creative, artistic, performing arts, any of that. Immediately, it just makes me completely calm down. I just go into another world. Mm-hmm. So I love those ideas. But I know you were talking to me before about the things that you can do for that, for creativity, for managing things. Have you any suggestions about just little tips we can do every day that's going to boost our energy, which is also going to have a positive effect on positivity, on confidence, on creativity, and those channeling that sort of positive vibe to help us be more successful? And I don't necessarily mean, career salary, but just our own internal success, which then goes and spreads to everything. What would you suggest as daily routines?
So one of the daily routines is, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but something that gets you out of your head and into your body.
Yep.
And, oftentimes when I worked in a corporate situation, I would just go outside for a moment or go into the bathroom and just close the door and just breathe. Like that practice of just breathing. I know we've probably heard that a lot, but can't underestimate just how powerful that is to breathe. It changes our whole physiological physiology.
Yes.
And so really consciously breathing and doing it in a way that that's all you're thinking about at the moment. That brings you into your body.
Yeah.
So whether it's before you sit down at your desk during the day, or whether it's, at lunchtime, or, that's a daily thing.
Yeah.
And several times daily.
Yes.
So I would definitely say that. The other daily routine is, and this is something that you can do as part of your workday, or you can do, not part of your workday, but connect with at least one person with intention.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, if you're at the grocery store, the clerk or the person in line with you, like, just be present and connect with them, because we have isolated. Most of us have had a lot of isolation the last couple of years.
Yep.
Plus, we know that one of the things that contributes to stress is isolation and being disconnected.
Yep.
So if we make a daily routine to connect with someone with intention, it could also be you connect with someone, like, how someone comes into your mind and you're like, God, I haven't thought of them for so long, reach out to them, text them, send them an email, message them, whatever that is. Like, just trust that. That could be your intuition saying there's something there.
Yes.
That's important.
Yeah.
It could be that you're early to a meeting.
Yep.
And you're on the Zoom call, or you're in a room with someone, and rather than checking messages and stuff, maybe turn to them.
Yeah.
And use that time to connect with intention. Yes. So I'm purposely giving lots of different opportunities to do that for people. So that it'll fit with their style, whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, or they're working from home, or they're working on site, whatever that is. So connect with someone very intentionally and really listen and be present.
Yeah. It makes such a difference. It really does. And I particularly like the idea of just before a meeting starts, if you're a little bit early, just chatting to the people, because nobody does now. It's always dead silence waiting for the meeting to start. And it used to be chatty, friendly, how are you, where have you come from, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like people don't communicate anymore. Unless it's on the agenda, they just don't communicate. And it's so sad, because it makes such a difference.
Yeah. We are whole people, and we bring our whole selves to work. And even more so now if we're working from home. Like, I love seeing your cat there, and I love seeing the environment you're in. And that's an opportunity for me to connect with you about that. Yeah. And so,
that's great. That's lovely. And any other things that you think we can do for channeling stress towards the positive side? I know I'm coming back to it, but I've got so many people, I don't know whether it's recently or whether it's been there longer and I just haven't picked up on it, but everyone looks at stress as being negative now. And they really do seem to have forgotten how it can be positive. And I think it's so important for them to really understand it can have a positive effect if you can just change it. So is there anything else that you recommend for that, or tricks for doing it? I know I'm boring on about stress, but I've got so many people who are stressed at the moment.
I get it. And I can just keep giving more tips and tips. So bring it on. I'm fine with that. Okay. So I'm going to give people a few questions that they can write down. And so this might be another journaling, or it just might be in the moment you ask yourself this when you're really stressed. So one of the questions is, what do I think is impossible right now? What do I think is impossible right now? Write that down.
Yeah.
What might be possible instead? What might be possible instead?
Yeah.
And what assumptions am I making about this situation?
That's great, because that really gives you objectivity, and you're sort of taking yourself out of it and looking at it instead? Those are brilliant questions.
And then the last thing is, I find that along with questions, sentence starters can be very powerful, especially in closing a journaling session.
Yeah.
And so the 2 sentence starters that I would recommend actually let's do 3 because I feel like there's some different levels. So the first is, I am aware of. I am aware of. So after doing those questions, you might be aware of something that you weren't. It's important to, make that obvious. The second sentence starter would be, I am free to. I am free to. Because when you go through those questions, you realize how much of that stress might be self-imposed, because we know stress is what you can control and what you can't control, acknowledging that. So I am free to. And then the last one is, I now choose to. I now choose to. Yeah. And that's the action piece. That takes the awareness and the insights we've had and the energy that's shifted, because just by doing those questions, you've shifted energy.
Yeah.
And then you're in a space of action and inspiration and empowerment, quite honestly. Yeah. And that's the antidote to stress, is to find out, what is it? Where am I being disempowered? Yes. And where can I claim my power back?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how?
That's brilliant. I'm going to do that tonight.
Oh, good.
Very good. So
let me know how that goes.
Yeah. Now, it's amazing. I really, really have enjoyed all of those. There's so much good advice. Any final piece of wisdom or key strategy, as well as all the others you've given us, that you think we should keep in mind to really help us going forward?
Mm-hmm. So a key strategy that has been so helpful to me and to clients I've worked with is about being authentic.
Yep.
That is a key strategy to stress, because we either compare ourselves to people and then try to be that, which we think we should be. So there's a lot of shoulds.
Yeah.
Or we put ourselves in a box. And so that creates stress. We think we can't say that or do that. So a good strategy is always go back to, what's my truth? What is true for me? And of course we're, this is all in terms of being able to have good relationships with people. So we're not, coming from a place of attacking or judging or anything like that, but it's just, what is it? Do I need to communicate differently? Would that be a good way do I need to be more authentic in my communication? Yeah. That might be a strategy. Maybe you might want to learn how to be able to do that, to make direct requests. I spent many years doing conflict resolution work, and that was one of the key things, strategies was authentic communication, respectful and direct communication. Some of us don't have those skills.
Yep.
Some of us are further along than others. Yep. So that might be a strategy. It might be that you need to beef up your communication. Yep. But when you go back to that authenticity, you take away the comparing to other people too, and the expectations we place on ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Because expectations aren't our authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a key strategy, is when you're in that place of being totally stressed, really ask yourself, am I being authentic in this conversation, in this meeting, in this, whatever it is, am I really being authentic?
That makes such a difference. I've never thought of that. Excellent. Thank you. So Vasi, I'm sure people are going to want to get in touch with you. How can they contact you? Where can they find you?
They can find me at my website, which is Ignite Your Soul, and the soul is spelled S-O-L, igniteyoursoul.com.
Yeah.
Or my email is Vasi, V-A-S-I, at igniteyoursoul.com.
Perfect. Brilliant. Vasi, thank you so much. I've really appreciated that. It's definitely helped me already. But it's so interesting, and there's so many pieces of advice that I think will make a big, big difference to everyone that's been listening. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Everybody, you've been listening to Vasi Huntalas. don't miss going to her website, having a look, seeing what she's got to say there. And hopefully we will see you again next week. Everybody have a lovely week. Thank you. Bye.